And then, hey, what's up, you guys? It's Mxiety. I am on tonight with Jason Docton of Rise Above the Disorder. He is here to chat with us about everything and anything in between mental health related. Yeah, cool kid dances. Heck yeah, enjoy that. Removing Thunder, thank you so much for that host. As you guys know, starting with the interview, we mute all alerts, and we will resume them once our awesome guest has had a time to be like kick-ass and had an opportunity to talk and all that good stuff. Jason, welcome in. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you again. Yes. Well, I mean, if so, here's how it's going to go, you guys. You know the drill. If you have any questions, be sure to ask them. They will be answered, not in the order necessarily they're received, but in the order that they make sense to the conversation. So if you guys ask something that kind of ties into what we're talking about, we'd way rather be talking to you than just talking at you. So if you have any questions, just shoot them away and we'll respond to them as it makes sense to the conversation. I'm waiting for 5 feet apart next. Thank you. I'm a lady. Thank you. Yes. Okay, you guys, in front of the guest, okay? That's really embarrassing in front of our nice guest. You're showing off how I'm a lady and I burp. Okay. Well, Jason, so I want to go all the way back and pretend I don't know anything about Rise Above the Disorder, and pretend I don't know anything about anxiety gaming, and start from scratch. So what birthed Rise? I guess let's start with what birthed anxiety gaming. What made it a thing?
Yeah. So this is going way back, way back. When I was much younger, I was going to medical school.
Okay.
And was really excited to become a psychiatrist. Unfortunately, I had not even really my first in a really long time panic attack. And I was coming home from dinner with a friend and just had the worst possible panic attack. And I went to school the next day, and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't handle it. Everything that was going on, I just kept thinking, I can't breathe. I don't feel well. I was working as an EMT all of the time as well, building up my experience. And so I'm just going back and forth nonstop, no sleep, not taking care of myself, cramming as much as I can. Because medical school is incredibly taxing. And so I just kept having these attacks every time I go to school. So I took a day break, and a day break turned into a couple days break, turned into a couple weeks break, turned into dropping out of med school. And, concurrently with this, I was working at a very large mental health facility, Metropolitan State Mental Health Institute. And I noticed the same thing was happening there. I'd go there for work and have panic attacks. And so I would just stop going there. And then my mind kind of pieced together that maybe these panic attacks just happen every time we leave home. So, let's just not leave home.
Oh, yeah.
So I stopped leaving home, developed something called agoraphobia. I dealt with agoraphobia and extreme obsessive compulsive disorder for several years before I reached a breaking point where I was like, you know what, I'm just not going to do this anymore. I don't think I'm ever going to get better. I don't see the point in trying to. I can't leave home, so it's not like I can even get help. So I had committed my mind to this idea that I was going to take my own life. But at the time, I had this really weird justification that if I did that, it would be taking from the world without adding something to the world first. So my justification, the way I could make this work, is I would have to stop one person from committing suicide, and then I could justify going through with it myself. So I set out to do that. And the only thing that I really had at the time was video games. I was actually a professional World of Warcraft player, so don't at me about that. I would promote in every battleground and in every dungeon, hey, if you need someone to talk to, here is my Skype, or add me on Battle.net and we'll talk. And so I did this for months and months and months, always this weird mission that I just needed to help one person, just one more person. And eventually it happens. We got the first ever, I guess, would be client, I can't say patient, of Mxiety gamers. It was at the time. This lone Justin TV channel where I would try and talk with people online. Justin TV and the idea of Twitch Twitch hadn't been concepted yet, but Justin TV was just like a small live streaming site, and it looked terrible and the interface was really bad, but I would try and bring people on there to talk about these issues with. And the first person that I got, I talked exclusively with over Skype, just every single day, trying to figure out what was going on, talking with them about their feelings, and hoping that I could in some way help them move away from this idea of taking their own life. In their minds, they had lost this beautiful relationship and they didn't feel any reason to keep going. And so we talked through it, and we talked through it for months and months and months. And in the background of this, I'm stuck home all the time. I don't have any place to go or anything to do. So I'm reading clinical book after clinical book, and I'm learning CBT, and I'm learning mindfulness, and I'm learning all kinds of different approaches to trying to help them, and in real time practicing this. And I highly recommend no one do this. This is not at all ethical to do. But I was on my way out, so I'm just like, let's throw everything we can. So I read book after book and poured over material, and every day we would try something new. And if something started to stick, we would go with it. And eventually we did really well with CBT, and we were replacing a lot of these really harmful thoughts with really positive and longing thoughts. And he one day came to this conclusion that, what, if I was willing to die for love, then certainly love is worth living for. And he set out to fall in love again. And it was the most beautiful revelation. It shook me to my core, but it was also it was this like sad moment, because it was like, oh, okay, you're better then. So I guess that's it. And I stuck around for a while, and what went from daily multi-hour long conversations faded to maybe an hour conversation a day, to maybe 1 or 2 hours a week, to I'd hear from him every couple of weeks. And in the background, I'm constantly researching new things in case he needs help. My whole life at this point is dedicated to helping this one person. And and a couple of weeks went by, and he comes back and he said, hey, I'm so sorry for not keeping up. I went to Las Vegas, and I just had the greatest time with my friends, and I met this woman, and it's just, life has been super wild, and now she's moving up here, and we're just gonna, try that. And I was just so happy for him, but it was that final nail. It was that acknowledgement of, okay, so you don't need me. So the world doesn't need me. I've done what I'm here to do. So, I had kind of planned out this day and how I was going to go through with it. And I wanted to spend my last day playing World of Warcraft. I hadn't played in all of these months that I had been helping him, because my whole mindset was just surrounding him. And I remember logging back on and getting tons of in-game mail from people who had seen that message and were hoping that I could talk with them or add them, or, hey, here's my Skype, add me. And it gave me a new purpose to live. I had a lot of people to help. So Mxiety Gaming evolved from that, this humble attempt to, I guess, find meaning and purpose for my own life in light of what I was dealing with. It started as just, myself with this Mxiety Gamers Justin TV channel, to eventually calling it Mxiety Gaming, because at the time that was a cool thing to be like something gaming, complexity gaming.
Oh yeah.
That's how you knew you were legit. So
well, that's how you know you're a gamer, right?
Yeah. How else would they know other than that we're on the video game together?
Right. No, that's not it.
So, we stuck with that. And, the first iteration of it was a World of Warcraft guild, actually. Tons and tons of these people who reached out, who were looking for help. We decided to form a guild, and we created a pretty large guild on Tichondrius, initially as Horde. And it was great. It was just a bunch of people talking with each other, talking through these issues with each other. And one of the things that came up was like, hey, so, me talking to all of these people pseudo professionally is maybe not appropriate.
Oh.
So maybe we shouldn't do that. And one of the things that we were noticing is people we were talking to in our community would just stay. They weren't necessarily getting better. They were having people to talk to, which was fantastic, but there needed to be more. So we started doing the most basic thing we could think of. People would tell us where they live. I'd go on Psychology Today. I'd find a therapist near them, and I'd be like, hey, this therapist looks nice. You should talk to them.
Hey, I've been doing that. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. So people would do that. They were just like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then people would, we created a small website where you could just type in your information and we would send a therapist back to you. And people loved that. But over time, people would come back to us and they'd be like, hey, this therapist wasn't so nice. Or, hey, this therapist is super religious and I'm super not.
Right.
Or, I didn't know, but this therapist doesn't actually treat these issues that I deal with. Oh, okay. So maybe there's more to this than we imagined. So it kind of evolved into kind of a more in-depth science of, well, how do we find the best possible therapist for people? So we started asking more questions, and the website evolved into a long form that you'd have to fill out so we could know more and more and match it like that. And then, even though we'd go through that, sometimes therapists still didn't work out. So we started calling the therapist and we'd be like, hey, I'm working with somebody who I think should see you. I just want to double check that you're like as nice as you sound on paper. So we did that, and the process has refined significantly over the years and is now guided. I was gonna say,
yeah. How many people needed to do that? Because that, I imagine, after a while, that you need a lot of manpower for that.
Yeah, you definitely do. Independently, I think I probably put 2,000 something people through that program. And slowly reiterated every couple of people as we got more feedback. But it was great because it was a guild and it was a community, and we were all very vocal about, hey, this doesn't work, this doesn't work. It wasn't on the level of we're a nonprofit, so you can complain because we're an entity that is responsible. It was like, no, we're just a bunch of people in the same guild just trying to help each other. But it ultimately came down to another big problem. So we were giving people access to care that they were struggling with, but cost was the biggest problem. People would come in and they'd be like, great, this therapist sounds like a dream. This is everything that I really want. I know I can get better, but I can't afford this. I don't have insurance. Oh, this person's $150 a week. I thought this was like the total cost of therapy was $150.
Right.
So we had a really tough time with that. Some of the initial iterations also included myself going through the program. So I went through what we were testing and was very fortunate to find a therapist who literally worked on the block I lived on.
Oh my gosh.
It was less than a minute walk.
It sounds like it matched you up pretty okay. So you're doing okay.
Did all right with that.
Right.
And it was so silly. I went to see this therapist and I would have a panic attack and I'd be holding my mom's hand walking down the street. I'm in my 20s. And because I had OCD, and my OCD was specifically fear that I would touch something and have an allergic reaction, I would wear like 2 layers of jackets and I would walk to my therapist like this and I would turn the knob like this.
Right.
And then sit down all bundled up and be like, okay, fix me. What do we do? And as he was helping me, he introduced me to the idea of disability and disability for mental health issues. And I was receiving disability checks and I was able to pay for him through disability checks. Well, as more and more people are coming to us and can't afford it, I was like, hey, well, I'm doing better. So what if we just sent my disability checks to other people? This is not legal. Don't do this.
Don't do this at home, kids.
But we did this.
But we did. So then go on.
So we started sending my disability checks to people anywhere in the world. People would come to us from different countries, different states, and be like, hey, how do I pay for therapy? And be like, hey, just take my check. and then pay for therapy that way. And so people started doing that, and people within our community were like, whoa, that's insane. What if we just raised this money? Um,
Right.
and so we just started raising this money. Um, and we didn't piece together nonprofit, a business, a company, or anything. We're
Yeah.
just like, this just seems like the right thing to do. Let's do this. Um, so we started doing that. And then as a World of Warcraft guild, we came up with the next natural step. Well, what if we sold stuff in game? Um, Funny enough, I first told this story in front of Jeff Kaplan, who is one of the creators of World of Warcraft, probably more well known for single-handedly creating Overwatch, or incepting Overwatch as an
Right.
idea. I was talking about this at USC, and he happened to be in the back listening. But we were selling boosts on World of Warcraft. So if you wanted the latest gear, if you wanted to complete the latest raid, all of us were hardcore raiders because most of us were stuck at home
Mm.
struggling with mental health issues. So we would carry your character, and we would take all of the money made from those boosts and we would pay for people's therapy. I would just send that out to people's therapists all over the world.
Wow.
We did this by the thousands.
And
Um,
this is so how many years has kind of passed as this is evolving?
Probably 3 years.
Okay.
Um, so
Wow.
this is over the course of 3 years. Um, and we were going crazy with it and having the best time doing this, learning about all kinds of cool people. Um, and then we reached this really, really crazy intersection where somebody reached out to us and they were like, hey, we want to do a fundraiser for you. Um, are you a nonprofit? And we were like, what is a nonprofit? Like, what do you talk, what do you mean? And it's
We're
like, are
not
you a
making profit. Is that what you mean?
like, nobody
Right.
here makes money if
Right.
that's what you mean. So yeah. And they were just like, look, this band Imagine Dragons heard about you and wants to raise money for you, but you need to be a 501c3 nonprofit. And we were just like, Imagine Dragons, like that Imagine Dragons. And they're like, yeah.
The one on the radio, that one. That's so cool.
Yeah, that band. Okay, we'll do it, whatever. So we
Yeah.
did the paperwork and filled it out as fast as we could and sent it back. And we teamed up with this Twitch broadcaster, Trick2G, who is still one of the larger broadcasters, and at the time was one of the largest broadcasters on the platform. And he brought Dyrus and Night Blue and Searches and Wild Turtle, all kinds of big League of Legends broadcasters back in the day. And they kicked off this event where the band Imagine Dragons would play League of Legends against a severely handicapped group of Twitch broadcasters who are professional League players. Um, and it was just the most insane thing that we had ever experienced. We became a nonprofit almost overnight. We had a lot of money almost overnight, and we had a lot of reputation overnight. Suddenly, lots of people were reaching out to us, lots of brands, lots of sponsors, lots of people obviously in need of our help. And we were just like, oh, like we're like 3 people in a guild. We don't
Right.
what?
We need to
We
make
don't
this
even
a
have a
thing because it's, yeah,
website.
the way we stand right now, we're not going to stand for very long.
No, it was really, really crazy. And it was also the point where I wasn't really leaving home yet. I hadn't done that whole thing yet. Um, so I was still working on my mental health, and I was just like, oh boy, we're in for a sad. This is going to be crazy. Um,
But you
and
were in for a rad. You're
I
welcome.
was
I'm here all night.
eventually in for a rad.
I'm here all night. Go
Um,
on.
so we go about doing this whole process, and the event goes off without a hitch. It is wonderful. Everything is good. We're blowing up. We get our first office, which is just down the street from my house, which was the only distance that I could go at the time.
Right.
Um, and we start bringing people on. Nobody is paid. To this day, no one is paid actually. But at the time, we were just a group of people trying to figure out how to run a business, and it was a disaster to do. Um, we tried to do our next event, and we got completely scammed on our event to quite a bit, and it pretty much just put us right back into bankruptcy because
Oof.
we had greenlit all of our money to go into care, and we're not expecting to get scammed on an event.
Right.
And that was pretty much it. Anxiety gaming was here, and then it was down there. Um,
Wow.
and that was it. And I remember after all of this, after realizing how much we were scammed for and what happened, and that it was a staff member that helped scam us, and feeling completely devastated.
Right.
Um,
Out of control and
yeah, everything. And now, tons of people are in need of help, and we're just like dead in the water. Um, I got an email saying that I was invited to speak at PAX West. And in my mind, I was just like, well, I don't even leave like further than my street, and my company is dead. Like what am I
right.
gonna do with this?
Right.
Um, but I accepted it anyways. And in my mind, I figured, well, why not? What do I have to lose? Everything is already gone. In my mind, by the further I am from home, the worse things are. Oh, well, gonna just do it. And I just did it. I just randomly flew out to Seattle with the last $200 I had to my name, stayed in a Motel 6 with like several other people. Um, and I remember going to this speaking event. We were like one of the first panels in this. I think it was PAX West, like 2016,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Um, and I walk into where the panel is, and it's totally dead. There's no one there, and I'm just like, my life is actually the worst it can ever be. And I had a full-on like panic attack, and I
Yeah.
ran to the bathroom, and I'm having this panic attack in the bathroom, and I washed my face, and I'm like, you know what? If we're gonna go down, we're gonna go down with dignity. Let's just go. And I walked back, and there's all these people like trying to get into PAX. There's a massive line. I like walk around all these people, and I get into the venue. And one of my partners at the time was like, "Hey, did you see that line?" And I was just like, "Yeah, they're trying to get into PAX." And they're like, "No, they're trying to get into our panel." And I was like, "What? What?" Um, and sure enough, our panel opens, and there's hundreds of people. There's people standing. There's people with the door open outside listening. There's people seated on the floor. This full panel. And I like rushed through this speech that I had prepared because I'm this anxious mess who's like agoraphobic and is far away from home and from
Right.
safety.
Right.
And the first question that we got, the first person that raised their hand was this guy, and he said, "Hi, I flew all the way out here from Australia. You helped me a year ago, and I just wanted to thank you in person
Oh my
for
goodness.
changing my life." And I
Oh
was like,
my goodness. Suddenly leaving home
whoa.
isn't so bad and worth it, huh?
Yeah, and that turned around everything. That changed everything for us. We knew we had to take this seriously. We knew that we had to continue the nonprofit, um, and it's just been do or die since then. 2017 was a year where we focused a lot on becoming a nonprofit in terms of a business and bringing on business people and bringing on those kinds of individuals who know how to turn something from nothing. 2018 so far has been a direct overhaul of our internal and clinical staff, where we've added dozens and dozens of social workers, dozens of therapists, dozens of psychiatrists to consult from the medical side. We've moved offices multiple times since then, and probably bringing things rapidly up to speed. Um, our most, our greatest outward decision of changing from anxiety gaming to Rise Above the Disorder, or RAD.
And that officially happened in 2018, right? That was end of
Yes.
last year. Okay.
Mm-hmm. That happened at the end of last year officially, and then we began to really roll it out and announce it early this year.
Yeah.
Um, that that's who we are now, and we're about this. This isn't one person in a garage or one person in a small office with a couple of volunteers trying to help. This is a team of committed people who are putting 90 plus hours a week into this to make sure that we're changing lives constantly, that we live and breathe what we started and set out to do.
That's awesome. I mean, that's beautiful. There's people, people in chat are saying that they're crying, and I'm not allowed to cry because I am the host and I'm supposed to keep it together, but that's beautiful. That's beautiful. How does it feel to kind of like say it all at once? Have you had to do that before?
Yeah, sometimes I have to say it, and it's surreal. The story of anxiety gaming, the story of Rad has for so long been my story, my fight for recovery, my attempt to do something in this lifetime to give back, and now it's powerful to share that it's more than my story. It's so many people's stories now. We've touched the lives of over 28,000 people from every country you can even think of. Every time people ask us like, hey, are you international? I always say I've helped 3 people in Pakistan. That's how international we are.
Yeah.
Therapy is needed everywhere.
Yeah. And you're able to connect people to resources you're able to find therapists for them in Pakistan?
In Pakistan, yeah. Wow. It takes a lot of searching.
Right.
It takes a lot of digging, but that's what we love to do.
That is freaking cool. And I am going to take a second and break the fourth wall and be like, hey, heart support. Hey, Dan and Casey, you guys should talk to Jason. I was just talking about you and how rad you guys are. Everybody wave and say hello. And also thank you so much for that 10-month sub. I appreciate it. And while we're here, Pantera Dude, thank you so much for that sub as well. I don't know if heart support's still here or they just sub and dipped. But oh, how rad we are. Oh my God. I made that joke before and it's just as bad coming out of somebody else as I do.
We hear it a lot in the office. We thought that would
you knew what you did. You knew what you did.
Now it happens.
Big Bog. Yeah, heck yeah. Right. So you guys are now connecting and you're all best friends. Perfect. So I did that. I'm happy that we accomplished that. I mean, what are the chances that, because heart support, you guys are like super busy. So what are the chances of you guys coming in? Let's hang out. Yeah, let's all hang out. If nothing else, it sounds like we can all meet up at TwitchCon. I'm down.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, that's a beautiful story, and I love the idea that it's now about so many more people than just one. But all it took is one person's kind of hope, right? All it took is one person's decision to hang in there. Right. And that's what I try to say. That's what I try to encourage, is that the difference between like you creating something awesome and having an awesome life for you is just the decision to keep going even when you can't see why. And I appreciate people who do that to just an nth degree. Thank you so much for hanging in there and then making something so beautiful out of something so dark.
It's been my greatest honor.
It's amazing. So how many people do you have working now? Like how many people are volunteering or on staff? Like what does your team consist of right now?
In the office, we have quite a few people. I want to say there's like 8 or 9 of us that are constantly rotating out on a daily basis, and then we usually tap into a resource of about 400 volunteers who are active volunteers, whether they're social workers or medical doctors, nurses, or they're working in school. They're building up their hours, things like that. So they're regularly involved. We're also rapidly recruiting. I've got about 9 more people that we're going to bring into the fold over the next few weeks. So
that's awesome. Heck yeah.
Yeah.
That's so how does that feel? I feel like I'm making you a little bit nervous, even like because we're bringing this all together into this big umbrella of being like, this is all the stuff that happened. And I mean, it's happening in the course of like 3 years and plus. And so in that context, it seems like, well, yeah, this is building and there's ups and downs. But in the context of like, these past 40 minutes, we're just like, tell the story and everything feels like it happened at once. So I could totally get how that could be overwhelming. So I hope we're not like completely overwhelming you by doing that.
No, it's always the reality that like this is happening. You kind of you live it, but when you pull yourself outside of it and see it happening, it's pretty intense. Never expected it to be even remotely the size that it is. And we're still a relatively small nonprofit.
Yeah.
We're incredibly lean in terms of what we bring in.
Mm-hmm.
We have shouldered and shrugged off a lot of corporate sponsors.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that we're always very cautious about. So that does hold us back a little bit, because for a lot of these major nonprofits, their money are coming from partners and sponsors.
Of course.
Um,
But when you accept money, it's accepting money now is not the same responsibility that it was 20 years ago, when you could maybe not even know what else is going on. Now you have a social responsibility to others to answer for the money that you're taking in. Absolutely.
Exactly. I think that's a very important thing. One of the larger nonprofits that exist on a national space accepts money from Pfizer and other pharmaceutical companies, and it's the most supported one in the country. And those are things that get offered, but those are things where it's the expectation is that I am directly supporting a medication manufacturer, and although I am pro medication,
right,
I my journey is not anyone else's journey.
We literally,
I don't want to fake that.
Yeah, we literally talked about that right before the stream started, huh?
Yeah, that's the bit. We've been approached by energy drink companies, by vape companies, by apparel companies that have maybe iffy labor laws. I mean, there's always like we're very, very thoughtful about what we do. So it'll hinder us a bit, but now we're finding the right places to gain funding from, and people that we love and enjoy associating with. So
that's awesome, dude. And I mean, slow and steady definitely wins the race in this stuff. You'd rather get ahead with the right people than run ahead with the wrong ones. And watch. Yes. Yeah, especially since you've learned that from people already kind of screwing you guys over, right? So it's a little bit the hard way, a little bit the easier way, a little bit mostly mostly trying to be as smart as possible. That's okay. All right. I'm going to try to stop saying that's awesome, because I don't know if I'll be able to. But okay, that's rad. Yeah. That's rad. Was that the intention? Did you guys start that up with the idea that like rad is like it's going to be rad and everything like you guys put that together cuz or was it kind of it kind of fell into it?
So it was forced into it.
Okay.
One of the I did a fundraiser with Imagine Dragons, which was lovely. Another fundraiser that I did, but we were really small and didn't capitalize on. We did an event with Demi Lovato called Hope Dealer. Mm-hmm. And this was just a beautiful event. It raised a ton of money. It was very powerful. Demi is just one of the most incredible people I've ever met. But we wanted to do that again, and we wanted to call it Rock Against Depression. Mm-hmm. Rad. Okay. And we loved the idea so much. We loved the name so much. We loved creating merch for Rad. Right. We didn't end up doing the music event because we were like, like we're gaming for the most part. Like we're just doing nothing but music stuff right now.
Right.
And then so we just didn't end up doing that event. And then when we were rebranding, we went through all kinds of names. Elixir, we went through just so many weird, bizarre, random iterations of it. And eventually I was just like, well, I really like rad. What fits rad? And people are like, disorder? Disease? No, disorder. I guess disorder encompasses everything, because people always ask us, do you only treat anxiety as anxiety?
I would have never, but that's like, somebody asked me recently, and I've never had this asked before, which was, do you have anxiety? And is that why your name is Mxiety? Is that the only thing that you suffer from? And I was like, I mean, yes and no, right? Like, yes, definitely anxiety is a big part of it, but does that mean that I'm not allowed to have other disorders? Because like depression just doesn't roll off the tongue the same way, and the M-polar, like, it's just not.
Impression.
I guess. Oh man. All right, rebranding everything. There. No, you guys heard that? Nobody take that. Rebranding the whole thing. Impression. I didn't even. Anyway, all right. Well, you guys can have that name. You came up with it. But okay.
We fit it. We fit everything into rad.
Yeah. So
So
why did you decide to move away from anxiety? Because people were like, oh, do you only treat anxiety? Was that the main reason?
yeah, so a lot of people would ask us, do you only treat anxiety? Some people ask us if we made video games for people who struggle with anxiety.
Okay.
Um, Increasingly, we've been a huge part of esports.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, one of our first offices was out of the Counter Logic Gaming home, their
Oh,
compound. So we were working straight out of there, and I was learning under their CEO how to be a CEO.
mm-hmm.
Um, so we've just been a part of esports for a very long time, and one of the things that we had done is we asked the esports team, "Hey, would you be interested in putting our logo and our branding on your jerseys?" And they were
Yeah.
just like, they were all about it until they printed it, and they were just like, "Anxiety gaming under so and so gaming is really confusing.
Yeah.
That's going to
All
be a
right.
note from us." And we were just like, "Oh man, that's right." Um, that was a big killer for us. And
Yeah.
then we got approached with the idea of starting a large scale physical clinic with multiple beds. Um, and the name was the biggest issue they had. They were just like, "This name is really weird. Like, what does this have to do with anything? The
Dang.
work is great."
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so we're just like, "Okay, we're changing names. Like,
Right. Okay.
let's do that now then."
Right. All right. Well, and I guess it's better to do it. I mean, in terms of companies, like, To Write Love has been around, I think they said 20 years. So, like, in terms of nonprofits, you guys are still babies. So now is a good time to change everything, I guess. But
Yeah.
yeah. uh, so, all right. So, I think you answered like a bunch of our basic questions, but you guys don't forget, if you have any questions, please do ask them in chat. What do you want to know more from Jason? What do you want to know more about Rise Above? What do you want to know about like their history? Whatever it might be, ask your questions, ask them away. Um, wow. So why do you believe, why is mental health the, other than, okay, so this started with you, and mental health is, what brought you into the fold and was obviously behind everything, but you have this opportunity to rebrand and you don't go, rise above every illness ever, like you're not, what about mental health made you want to like hone in on it?
I think to contextualize this, I'm essentially a zealot when it comes to mental health. So everything I say might sound fanatical or be kind of ridiculous, but I understand that I am that way. To me, mental health is everything. It is the core problem underlying all of societal issues. Um, Sometimes people ask me like, "Hey, what about the homelessness problem? Is
Sure.
that something?" Well, sure, mental health is probably
That is the
probably
homeless
the
problem,
greatest.
is mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about students failing in school? Yeah, it's probably their mental health.
Yeah. Yeah.
What about diets and exercise and these things? Like, yeah, all related to mental health.
Yeah.
What about war and peace and yeah, mental health? Cool. To me, it is the ultimate answer. We live in a world where, on average, it costs around $10,000 to see a therapist out of pocket.
Yeah.
And if you have premium insurance, you will still pay over half that cost out of pocket in your out of pocket your copay fees. Um, what reality, at least here in the U.S., is that a realistic amount of money to depart with? Um, we can't do stuff like that. There are universal healthcare systems that exist in other countries, but they're so overburdened with care that people might be on wait lists for months, if not years on end. Um, the global spending cost of mental health is like $2.5 trillion.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the number one healthcare expense, period.
Yeah.
And what are we doing? Somehow, even though out of pocket it's only $10,000 for somebody to see a licensed therapist in private, the government Medicare spends $28,000 per person on mental health costs with no verifiable results, and no conclusion whether that person gets better within that time period. What is happening with all of these things? The economy, the disability, and the cost of social security, all of these things, mental health. to me, that's why I stick with it. I think I can change these things, and I think by being involved with gaming, that I can reach the critical audience that is needed to change these things. If the average issue or the average age that these issues onset on is 14, like the statistic is 50% of these issues onset by the age of 14, what happens to that person if they are from a single parent home and that parent works multiple jobs and they don't have $10,000 to spend and they don't even have insurance or access to that? They live in a country where there's poor access to mental health services. So this person just suffers, and they drop out of high school, or maybe they drop out of college and they don't contribute to society financially, and then they go on Social Security or disability, and that cycle continues. I can help that person. I can appeal to them through the medium that they care most about, which is gaming. And I can do that by giving them the two greatest, or solving the two greatest barriers to mental health care, and that's cost and access. Instant access online, paid for entirely by donations. Done. Your life gets better, you move on, and all of these other issues that people are concerned about in society are resolved through this better educated, well-mannered, positive wellness, good mental health individual. That to me is why mental health, why I continue with it above anything else.
I don't know that there's a way that you could possibly from any angle argue with that. That's beautiful. Yeah, no, I'm serious. So what do you believe, how do through all of this, through all the tough stuff that you went through, and I want to slightly diverge, and I have to ask, so it seems like you're not wearing 2 sweaters anymore, and I know not necessarily trying to push the attention onto you, because I know that's not what we're here for, but you clearly seem like a good example of recovery being a possibility. Do you feel like that's the case? Like, do you feel like you've kind of also set yourself up to be an example to people and that like it gets better?
Myself as the example is always something that I'm quite curious about.
Mm-hmm.
I could see myself as the example maybe in an anti-hero sort of sense. I am a character with many, many flaws. Arguably the only thing that I do well is help people in this capacity. And for me, that works. And for me, that's okay. I think as an example, otherwise, probably not. But me as a person, I have gotten significantly better.
Yeah.
Completely better, no.
Right.
My lifestyle, mental health issues and treating mental health issues is a lifestyle change. And sometimes I don't stick to that lifestyle. And when I don't, I suffer with it. I legitimately suffer with it. I have a speech at GDC coming up, and I know I'm going to have a panic attack on the way there. I'll do fine during the speech because I enjoy speaking now, but the travel, it's, sometimes it gets to me off and on. I've been all over the country. I've been to multiple countries, and sometimes I do really well, and sometimes I don't do so well. So, I think when I get pulled in as an example, I always like to add the context of, I'm not some kind of superhero. I'm not some kind of person who is saving mental health or something. I'm just another person with very limited capabilities who's decided to focus that limited capability on one thing, often at the cost of many other things in my life. And I show all of that, and that's acceptable. I think that's where we have to put it. I guess I say that specifically because I think when I see people get put into examples, when I see people be held to higher standards, they inevitably fail, and we inevitably find things about them that we disagree with, and that's always the most sad thing. Like, right, if we heard something bad about Mr. Rogers tomorrow,
oh no,
that shattered it. Yeah, it's right. Like, oh no, it's Mr. Rogers.
Don't joke like that. That's
but he's just a guy,
Yeah, he is. Yeah, and it's very likely that he may have accidentally kicked a kitten at some point in his life or something like that, and Yeah. The consequences of us upholding people to these standards are quite fascinating as well.
And for me, I mean, I don't expect to be anywhere near him. I guess where I always get concerned with the examples, especially, is okay, so you've been to therapy, you've done medication, are you completely cured? And
Oh,
it's
okay.
no, no. Have panic attacks every once in a while. I get depressed and sometimes struggle, and you see it reflect in my work, and I pull myself back out. The difference that treatment provides is that I consistently pull myself back up.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
going to GDC knowing that it's going to be tough, I'm still going to go. Nothing is going to stop me from going, and that's okay. I will be uncomfortable, and I have learned how to tolerate being uncomfortable and what it means to be uncomfortable. And that's what treatment is. And in the frequency, it certainly goes down. It's not a daily thing, it's not an everyday thing. Nothing might happen at GDC. And if I had slept more today, I'd probably be in the mindset that no, intention is everything, right? I got to manifest this
Mm-hmm.
into reality.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, that's what treatment can do for people. And if that is an example I can set, then wonderful. If you're going to judge me on anything else, then you will be let down.
I'm sure, like many people, you are a lot harder on yourself than you need to be, but it's okay. For the purposes of this interview, we will let you tell us that you are flawed and and not the God we have come to decide that you are. I don't know,
Oh,
man. I don't know, man. I don't know. If it helps you in any way, shape, or form, I get it. I get it. It's one of the reasons I think on this channel I've made it very a very distinct effort to show people when I am not feeling well and to show people what I am doing as a result of not feeling well. So, great example. I'm not feeling my best right now, so I will be taking off next week a few days and taking time to wrap my head around things and, so stuff like that, and telling people like I'm going to my therapist next week, even though I haven't been in a few weeks. So like all of that. So what do you do? So what do you recommend to others, and what do you do to ensure that you stay healthy, and to maintain? I mean, like you're doing 40,000 things at once. You have to, because you're the CEO of a nonprofit. There, I said the whole thing in one. But so what do you do? I mean, and I understand that like in an ideal world, right, you'd be getting enough sleep and drinking enough water and taking a balanced approach to your day and making sure you get a
right.
bath in the evening. And so, like, let's throw that all aside because you're not doing that. I don't think anybody's doing that. Yeah, and you like taking a jog and then doing yoga. So all of those things, right? So, so what do you, as a human, what do you do to kind of try to keep yourself as afloat as possible?
Yeah, what I do, the staple things that I do, I go to therapy once a week. I see my therapist every Monday. Like many people in the office, I take off and see a therapist in the middle of work and then come back and continue.
Oh my
Um,
God, you and my old boss should have a conversation. Go ahead, sorry. Not
oh,
about me. Nope.
um, no, I love taking off to see my therapist. That's probably one of the biggest things that I've done. I've seen the same therapist since I first beat my agoraphobia, and we don't talk as much about the anxiety so much as we
Yeah.
just talk about managing life
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
personal thing. My personal life, what's happening there.
Right.
Um, on top of that, um, I love going on these very like isolated walks every day.
Mm.
When I get home, regardless of what time I get home, and it's more of an incentive to get home while it's still light out.
Mm-hmm.
I walk around this really nice park area and do that for about 30 minutes without my phone, without music or anything. It's just the time for me to process everything, think about everything. I think probably my most creative things, my most concise and clear thoughts come from those walking periods.
Right.
Um,
Right. The moments when you're not doing 40,000 things is when you're able to think about new things. Yeah.
Correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Yeah.
Here in the office, one of the things that we do, we have this thing called the walk.
Okay.
And so when people are stressed out, when they're trying to think through things, when they have a bunch of ideas, they go on what's called the walk. And um, we are situated in a really cool place, and there is this long unused, like, it's like a small street that nobody really drives down, and it's lined with trees, really, really tall trees that shade over the whole walk for about a mile.
That's
And because,
awesome.
yeah, it's wonderful. And so when you say you're going to go take the walk, it's like, okay, cool, and you just walk down that and walk back and have that time. You just get your headspace to be around all that greenery, to be isolated for a little bit. um, I'll also try and really focus every day and every night on setting intention. Um, so every day that I wake up, it's kind of like a very brief meditation of like, this is what I'm going to do today. This is what I'm feeling today. I intend to get things done. Likewise, trying to end the day on that same note. It's hard. Um, those are the things that I consistently do no matter what, because I've built it into my schedule to do.
Mm-hmm.
In the ideal world, there's a lot more. Eating better and not getting fast food all the time. Those things. But I can work a lot. So,
um, so how do you keep yourself motivated to keep talking about mental health, to doing all that? Like, how do you not, because sympathy fatigue is a real thing, right? And you're listening to people talk about the worst parts of the world, every day, like people hurting other people, people feeling pain because of what somebody else did, and all of that. So how do you make sure that you don't burn out, and that, like, and people in your office, I mean, I'm sure that this is just an issue when you're talking about mental health nonprofit. So how do you make sure that that stays? I mean, the walk sounds like one of those things, definitely, that would help with that. But
yeah, it's burnout is a major issue in mental health. Caretaker fatigue,
yeah,
sympathy fatigue. It's a nightmare. Honestly, the biggest threat that we often have here in the office, we get so many people who can't afford care,
yeah,
and we don't have the funds immediately available for them.
yeah,
We're tapped out for the next few months or next month, and we have to put them on the wait list. That's the most heart-wrenching thing for us, because we know what they're struggling with. We know how to solve this problem. Um, that's just it, and that's what we're supposed to do, right? We're supposed to provide the free mental health care.
yeah,
So it's really heartbreaking for us, but um, a lot of what we do is we've created an environment here where we're very open about that, where everybody is seeing a therapist.
yeah,
Once a week, we have a therapist coming in the morning, and they're here for the first 2 hours before we even open, for anybody to come by and just talk with, and just, hey, these last two cases I had are really, really rough.
yeah,
I need some help. Um, in addition to that, it's we're always talking about these different cases to each other, and finding ways to keep each other in a constant feedback loop of
yeah,
like, yeah, I just acknowledge that one of the cases that you have right now is really rough. Let me know
yeah,
if there's something that I can do. And you see this in hospitals too, where a lot of the people, a lot of the staff are talking about cases, and they're trying to find some way to keep a level of humor about it.
right.
Um, and it's not to a humor at the people we're helping so much as it's a
No, of
humor of
course.
like,
Yeah, it's to
man,
keep
it gets
yourself
tough in
human.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so we'll sometimes joke with ourselves about how we're feeling, and um, that's a lot of what we're doing, is a lot of debriefing, a lot of immediate access to mental health resources on a regular basis, a lot of communication between each other, and holding each other responsible. Because when one person isn't taking care of themselves, and even though even we might be doing everything to help them take care of themselves, if they're not doing their part, the going to therapy, the meditations, then we make sure that they do that. Because we all have the ability to impact each other's emotions when we come in. If we come in ready for anything,
Yeah.
we might get sexual assault cases on a minor. We might get has been in a suicide hold and is just now getting out.
Yeah.
We need immediate placement. We might get something that's really personal to us. I get an agoraphobic case, or
Yeah. Yeah.
those things. Like we stay ready for that. We all stay in the same room and talk with each other about it, and that's how we're keeping each other okay.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
incredible.
And very strict personal lives. Yeah, that's always fun.
So, right. And so, like, so I guess it's then important to, do you find that there is a separation between like your work and then the rest of your life? Or do you feel like they're kind of in a place where they're blended right now?
Um, I want to say for a lot of the staff that they're working on that and trying to
Yeah.
have a better
Yeah.
separation. For me, it's difficult. I think one of the most personal difficult things is I always represent Rad, no matter what.
Of
What I
course.
say is what Rad believes,
Yeah.
and that's hard. When you're around friends, when you're around family members, and increasingly, my friends are people who work in the industry. My friends are people at big gaming companies, and so, you're very cautious about what your persona is.
Yeah.
Um, so I've started to really set an intent to change that, and start to increasingly create a personal life that is completely outside of the industry and is totally alone, to have a separate social account for stuff like that where it's just me being me.
Yeah.
Um, so it's tough. It's always tough, but as long as you have that intention and you're making an effort to separate, it makes a difference.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I realized that that was, that does get a little bit more personal, so I appreciate it.
No, of
Um,
course.
so one of our, I kind of have two questions that I feel like are important to touch upon, but even though we are kind of running past our first hour, and this has just been like awesome chatting with you, and thank you for opening up the way you have about like just everything we've learned. I mean, I've learned the depth of Rad that like I had no idea was there. So I appreciate you sharing that, and I'm sure a lot of people listening to this later will as well. Um, what do you think is the hardest thing to explain about mental illness to other people? Maybe to whether somebody's neurotypical or just somebody who is trying to wrap their head around it. What do you feel like is the hardest thing to get out there about it?
Yeah, the empathy,
Yeah.
communicating empathy is always where I struggle the most. One of the first times that I had really experienced this in my life, I took a lift to the office once, and the Lyft driver had asked me what I do, and I was explaining what I do, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I have a cousin who struggles with depression. I wish he would just get over it already. I wish he would be stronger. I wish he would just
Uh-huh.
wake up and just stop. Like, I don't see why he just drowns
Just
himself."
so much cringe. Oh, that hurts. Okay. Uh-huh.
And I tried to explain it to him, and um, that's so hard to do.
It
It's
is.
so hard for somebody who hasn't felt these issues, to understand what it's like
Right.
to deal with these issues.
Right. If all
Um,
you have to compare to is, well, I felt really, really bad that one time, and then I listened to some good music, and then I felt better. So you do that, and then that should work
right.
for you. Right.
Right. And as somebody who's trained in biopsychology, I tried explaining to him depression as a disease and how it impacts the brain and how we can see it in fMRIs, and to no avail, of course. But over time, I've gotten a lot better at understanding that, and being able to explain that the barrier that exists between people who do struggle with these issues and people who do not struggle with these issues is simply experience. And when we can relate to them an experience where they failed and where they didn't overcome, that it makes it a lot easier to explain what it's like to continuously try as hard as you can and still feel like you're failing. I think the more sensitive thing to say is that we never fail as long as we're trying. But I think the reality for a lot of us, um, is that we often do feel like we're failing, and being able to communicate that in the way that it feels to somebody who can associate that feeling, who does. And we all know what it's like to fail at something. To legitimately try and fail is mostly the way that I communicate it to others. But it's an uphill battle. Thankfully, um, I feel like increasingly that problem is fading away. More and more people know about these issues. Unfortunately, more and more people deal with these issues, so they just already get what you're talking about. It's hard to find people who don't have a personal experience with these issues.
Yeah, and if enough people start talking about it and sharing about it, then you get this like weird talk show where people come on and just talk about their experiences all the time, and then it's not weird at all. I don't know. Somebody should come up with that. That sounds like a good idea.
Right, probably impression, something like that related to
Yeah, yeah,
impression.
yeah. There you go. We've created a brand for somebody out there. I don't know. uh, what do you wish more people understood, like about that failure, about those emotions, about like if I am, if I am neurotypical, if I am like, do you just think that explaining it through the sense of, like your biology background and explaining it, like sharing these stories is like the best way to go about it? Or do you really like, how do we keep the mental health awareness keep mental health awareness on the top of people's minds? And what do you wish people would understand, like truly understand about it, that's very misunderstood?
I think, initially my immediate thought is that it's not a weakness. Um,
Yeah.
and I think to say it's not a weakness just because so many of the people that oppose it um, feel that it is.
Yeah.
Um, in some ways, though, I almost feel like that dialogue isn't as necessary anymore. I think the important dialogue is between us.
Mm.
It's increasingly important for the people who do struggle with it to talk about it to each other. Um, Trying to convince other people, trying to sell these things, it it's an uphill battle that's not necessary for us anymore.
Yeah.
One of the things that, and I learned this from a business perspective, oddly enough. One of the things that somebody had told me is, well, how are you going to sell your nonprofit to organizations that have money and don't believe in mental health issues? Um, and I thought about that, and the nonprofit that I look up to the most is St. Jude.
Hmm.
And I said, well, St. Jude isn't trying to convince people that children struggle with cancer.
Right.
And the people who don't believe that cancer is a real threat or don't care about children, those aren't the people that St. Jude is trying to put on board their
Right.
mission.
Right.
That's the same thing here. I'm not trying to help people who don't know about mental health issues. I am saying that so many people struggle with mental health issues that throwing the articles at them, throwing the awareness campaigns
Yeah.
is something. It is important. Um, but what my mission is to do is when they make that decision, that one day that they want to get better, that they want to overcome this, that there is an answer to that, and that's my job.
Right.
Um, Anyone who doesn't believe in that, that's fine. Don't believe in it. I don't believe in a lot of things, and that's fine. It doesn't impact other people, and it doesn't have to. Um, so that seems to be my thought process there.
That is the first time I have heard that as an answer, and I'm absolutely blown away. That's incredible. Because
Thank
what
you.
I what I usually hear is like, oh, we have to talk to people about how, make it approachable, make it more about like just living and life, and explain to them what mental health is as a total. And those are all like, there's not like a right or wrong answer to this, right? Because it is ultimately subjective. But it is, I love that perspective. I love that idea that like maybe we need to be spending less time trying to convince people that don't believe in what's going on, and supporting people who do believe that something is up, and
Right.
kind of adjusting our expectations, and where we provide our help. I absolutely love that. So thank you for that. That's awesome. So you guys, if you have any questions, ask them now, because now's the time. Do you have do you have anything else that like we didn't touch upon that you definitely want to make sure people know about, or just whether it's about rad, whether it's about mental health, whatever it is?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about RAD's programs.
Yeah, let's go. Let's go. Let's do the most important thing. I mean, I have all these links. If you have any other links that you want to send to me to post up for people, I don't know if this totally organized and should have been done beforehand. But now that we're here, and if you have something, I will try to like pull it up and post up those links.
Sure. I mean, our website is just urrad.org. I'm like off and on trading my AirPods out as they die, but slowly pull them all in. Probably, you know, the biggest thing for us is we only have 2 programs. I think a lot of people try and do a lot of things. I know we've tried to do a lot of things. But man, that is super confusing for people that are struggling with a crisis at any given time, right?
Yeah.
How do we simplify things? So when you go to get help through our program, you'll see 3 options that are all part of these 2 programs. One, where you can ask a therapist anything that you would like, and we will privately. Oh, did I lose my AirPod?
Well, your microphone came in from a different, like we now have a different microphone working for you, so that's what happened. I mean, you still sound okay. It's just a different sound. We got nowhere to be. Oh my God, I'm looking. Oh boy, I'm looking at.
I don't know if my audio is going through.
Oh no, I can hear you. I can hear you. I don't know how else to do. Yes. Yes.
You can hear me? Okay, I can't hear you all of a sudden.
Oh no.
Okay, perfect.
Oh
okay,
no.
I'll wait for this other side to charge. Maybe that's where the audio is coming in through. So the first part, being able to ask a therapist anything, you know, when we talk about the 2 greatest barriers to mental health being access and cost, the idea of being able to ask a therapist is cost related. We want to make sure that everybody has the ability to ask even the most simple things, and that they have fair access to that. Expectations, it does take us a little bit. When we put that up, I didn't think it would be that popular, and then it got several hundred questions, and we're just like, oh, okay, we're going to need more therapists for this. So we're getting back to them as we can. The second part is part of our great program, and that's the therapist finder. If you have insurance, if you're able to pay for therapy, even if you're only able to pay, you know, $30 to $50 per session, some kind of discounted rate on therapy, we will help you find a therapist anywhere in the world, and we will make sure that they are personally tailored to you and your needs. Some of the most incredible things we've learned from this more advanced therapist finder than the previous iteration are metrics like the ideal distance between you and your therapist driving wise is 12 minutes. 12 minutes is the perfect amount of time to get to and from therapy. Anything over 20 minutes and the attrition rate goes up. Anything under 5 minutes and the attrition rate goes up. The attrition rate being the likelihood that you do not go back to therapy after the first session. Little things like that are things that we have become experts on, and we can utilize through the therapist finder. This is the one where we get hundreds and hundreds of requests for this. So we're on about a 1 to 2 week delay on responding to those as we bring on more social workers to answer those. For that question, Potato, the reason that we're finding, the reason that we suppose for under 5 minutes is that it's a lot easier for people to wake up a little bit too late and use that as a reason to not go when they're struggling with motivation. The convenience makes it a little too easy to stop. And of course, over 20 minutes, you know, the distance can be another. You know, we're always thinking, what's that internal dialogue in your head?
Right.
When that internal dialogue is, I can sleep an extra few minutes before I go to therapy. Oh, well, I guess I slept through therapy. Those are the things that end up playing a huge factor. So we're very cautious and careful. My thought process with the therapist finder is you are struggling with these issues. You're dealing with that overwhelming sense. It's hard to get out of bed every day. It's hard to have motivation to do anything. We'll do everything for you. So long as you can manage to fill out that application, and the application has a continued process. You can take days, weeks to finish this application. We'll wait. We're watching. And when you finally are able to complete that, we'll do all of the work. We interview all of the therapists personally. We will match them to you. We will set up the appointment, and you go and you begin your new life. No, well, what about my insurance? So we've already figured it out. What about the cost? We've already figured it out. It doesn't always go according to plan, but that's what we're here for too, to run that screen. I think, from example, the many therapists I called hoping to get better, where they just never returned my call.
Yeah.
Where they told me, no, sorry, unfortunately, I'm full right now. And it's just like, cool, like, I don't even want to live, and you're not going to make time for me. That validates me.
That's the thing
it's
that
unfortunate.
I find people struggle with.
It's really hard. It is the system. I hate that sometimes we have just as much of a wait time as we try and fight, but thankfully, because there's so many people willing to get help when we create that access pipeline for them. Now, all of this funnels into the second program, and that's our grant program. If the only barrier between you and getting better is the ability to pay, that's what we resolve. This to me is the most abhorrent issue plaguing mental health right now. The reality that there are people who will suffer potentially indefinitely when there are life-saving resources, even within a walking distance of their house, like mine was, but they can't access that resource because they can't afford to pay for it. Unacceptable. So as we can afford to, we cover the entire cost of that. Right now, there's a wait list for our grant. Our next round of grants will be announced in June, where we will send over 300 people into entirely free care. Entirely free care includes the cost of psychotherapy each and every week indefinitely. It includes the cost of medication, should they so choose to embark on medication as part of their journey. The cost of seeing a nutritionist and having them break down a diet for them, to them. The cost of travel. Let's say you don't have a car, you don't have a way to drive to and from therapy. We pay for the Lyft or Uber, whatever service is necessary. If you, for example, like one of our patients, have struggled with bulimia for years and are unsure what kind of internal damage struggling with bulimia may have done to you, we pay for the doctor's visits so that you can get scanned and make sure that you are on the right path to getting better. That's what we do in that second program. For us, it's an attempt at universal healthcare. These programs have saved around $702 million in Medicare costs over just a few years we've been around. The average cost for me to help somebody get better is like $600 when we work within our network, and we have everyone within our network. I've not had an issue outside of that. Versus, again, the $28,000 that the government is spending on your recovery. I'm confident that our programs can change the world as we get more funding to do that. But right now, that's all it is. And thankfully, we are not just locked to the US. Although we're based in Los Angeles, our programs are accessible internationally. If you are part of the UK and you're accessing the wonderful NHS system, we'll find you a therapist on NHS. Done, paid for, it's already taken care of. Your government cares about your mental health. Even though there's a lot to be improved on, you will have access. If you're in Canada, we will find ways to help you move around the lines and get into care. Same thing for any other country that does have some sort of universal form of healthcare that we can tap into. And if not, our grant also travels. So I've sent grants out to people in Mexico. I've sent grants out to people in, where did I send a grant out to just yesterday? Very, very small country in Africa. I don't know, that's probably going into too much detail anyways, but these grants go out anywhere, because at the end of the day, all we're doing, we're finding you a therapist where you are, and I just make the check out to them on your behalf, so you don't have to pay for it. So those are our programs. Let me try putting in my other AirPods so I can hear you.
Yes?
There we go. Yep.
Oh, you're back. It's okay. I mean, it was, yeah, all that was fantastic information, and thank you. And somebody asked, what can other streamers do to help Rad's movement? So, do you guys need fundraising? What do you guys need the most in terms of just like raising awareness or?
Yeah. So fundraising, I feel like that's always a nonprofit's go-to is
Yeah,
donate.
yeah.
Any nonprofit that gives you other options is trying to ease into the conversation where they ultimately
But really,
need
money. Okay.
more. Yeah. If you go to urrad.org, there is a section to get involved, and there is specifically a streaming section where you will get everything that you need to launch a fundraising stream for us, including letting us know the time and date so that we can promote you and make sure everybody knows that you're going live and doing your thing. Um, Fundraising for us is a little bit different than most nonprofits. And I say that in a very, I guess, expected sense. I think we expect when we donate to nonprofits that everything just goes towards the cause or the mission. To break that bubble, and again, my favorite nonprofit outside of mine is St. Jude.
Mm-hmm.
If you donate to St. Jude, you are actually donating to the Syrian Lebanese Foundation, which divides that donation in half and pays half over the course of several years back to St. Jude. They do that because the Syrian Lebanese Foundation is the fundraising wing. It is a separate nonprofit to St. Jude, and their fundraising ability is what brings in the billions of dollars that St. Jude needs.
Yeah.
But yeah, half of that is going to a totally different nonprofit whose only goal is to market, and the other half is paid over several years. A lot of nonprofits do stuff like this.
Yeah.
Nonprofits have operating costs. They pay people to do all of the good things, and sometimes stuff goes there. Bonuses are sometimes important. But here at Rise Above the Disorder, where nobody gets paid, literally no one, not even myself, 100% of the donations go towards covering somebody's therapy. So if you donate money and you found us through a broadcaster, it is incredibly likely that you are probably covering the cost of another viewer, another subscriber, somebody who you've chatted with, who's on your friends list. To me, that's the most important thing to do when it comes to donations, that you realistically change somebody's life that is in your community. That's what it should be like, especially as more and more nonprofits come into gaming and see that there's money in gaming.
Yeah.
This community needs all of these resources. This is what we're all about. It's going to go in that direction. Subaru, the car manufacturer, believe it or not, pays for this office. I don't have to worry about this office. It's already paid for.
You guys operate the way water does. Do you know the
Charity
charity water?
yes.
Yep. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So like
Exactly.
you can decide to donate to the operation, or you can decide to donate to the charity itself. And so like Subaru donates for the operation. That's right. Am I getting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So corporations have the choice. You don't have a choice.
Right.
All donations from the community just go
Yeah.
straight into helping other people. But yeah, corporations that get involved with us, they have the opportunity. Do you want to make it possible for us to stay here and do this, or do you want to help more people? Either way, we're going to help people because
Right.
that's what we love to do.
Okay, so that answers my, because I was like, that's all great, no, but like your employees that you're just talking about, they eat, right? Like you have to buy them the junk food that you don't want, you want them to avoid eating. All right, so that answers that.
We all work for free. Yeah, everybody finds other things to do on the outside. My team is the most incredible people. People have been here for years without taking pay, finding any possible way to freelance or do other things to make money outside. And it just blows my mind that that's the culture that we have. A bunch of people who are ready to sacrifice everything to do this. Nobody's ever asked to do these things. We don't keep people held to certain hours, and,
Right.
and yet they are here every day as I come in. And it blows my mind. I long for the day where I can pay them and make sure that they are taken care of and not struggling in the ways that we all do. But we just believe in this so much more. So that's kind of where we're at. But yeah, I mean, stream for us. show people that we exist is fine. Raising money for us is fantastic. Letting other people know that we exist is, I mean, just be a part of that life. Like us on social, follow us, join our Discord, stay in contact with us. You know, even if you're not able to donate, honestly, when we go in the Discord and we see people talking, or the times that we go live and people show up, like it just for us validates everything that we're doing. It reassures us that, yeah, this is what we should be doing. That kind of support goes a long way.
Got it. Thank you so much for sharing that and elaborating on that, because I didn't think, honestly, when we started the stream, I didn't think we'd get into the weeds like that. So that's really cool. Thank you. Thank you for being transparent about that as well. I don't really see any other oh wait, is there credence to the idea of providing therapy that is not seen as therapy, such as catering a game experience that basically gives an outlet without directly being that? Do you feel like that's helpful, or not as helpful as like literally sending somebody to a therapist?
I guess it depends on the situation, right? I think the gaming I do is therapeutic. I set that intent, you know, when I go home and play Apex Legends terribly, that, you know, this is therapeutic for me. You know, I think intent matters to make something therapeutic. Do I think that playing video games when you're stressed is going to cure an issue? Definitely not. Right. Do I think that playing games can pull you out of an issue temporarily and help you to create some distance between yourself and an issue where you can better process things? It's definitely possible to do that with gaming. Gaming has a lot of positive things that it can do for our mental health. When it comes to somebody struggling with an anxiety disorder or a mood disorder, they should see a therapist.
Yeah.
That's just the right way to go. But otherwise, yeah, I see all kinds of stuff, and I've seen other nonprofits that are trying to investigate if D&D can be therapeutic, or those kinds of things, which I think is fantastic. But you know, those things to me seem kind of like an aside. I think anything that gives people a community, that gives people a home, that gives people a social support network, something to fall back on, people to fall back on, is going to be wonderful. And it doesn't matter what it is or how you label it, that simply is how it works. And more power to people that find that value there and who stick with that. If they want to put a label on it, sure. As long as you're taking care of yourself, you should still go to a therapist. That's still going to be the best thing to do.
Got it. Community and connection. Yeah, absolutely. But the whole therapist thing, I'm just really excited because somebody else is saying this over and over again, and it's not just me. It's kind of like when your mom says something over and over again, you're like, sure, Ma, but then somebody else says it and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, so there's credence to this. Wow, okay, other people, yeah. It's like that, because I talk about therapy and all the importance of it like all the time, and I feel like I've kind of beaten that horse. Thanks for answering my question. Aw, okay. In my guild therapy session, because raiding was our outlet. And Atori, that's really cool. Do you guys have any other questions? You guys in the audience, do you have any other questions as we but I also think there are avenues for providing some aspects of CBT via games. Quim, that's really interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, I'm quite familiar with that. I didn't know if that was part of the question. One of our clinical advisors actually has a VR experience that he deals with phobias through. So if you're afraid of heights or airplanes or snakes, things like that, he does utilize Google Glass to help people work through those issues. Or Google Cardboard, actually. Yeah. There's a lot of different opportunities for that in the future. I've been a beta tester on things like Magic Leap, which is pass-through AR, VR, and I think that's going to be very promising in the future. I think when therapeutic applications get tacked on to gaming, there is a possibility to do more. I think when gaming somehow tries to fit therapy into it in some ways, that's not as fruitful. You know, I know there's a lot of people who are making medical games, or like there's things like Depression Quest, or I think versus games that are trying to directly address mental health issues. I just think there's still more effective things to be doing with that time and with that funding. But also games like Celeste are just fascinating ways to tell the story of mental health and provide I think the best avenue for therapy through gaming.
Right. You can use this. Oh, interesting. If you want to, wait, what? Hold on. What even? So with all that being said, you guys, if you don't have any other questions, we're gonna make sure that Jason can spend the rest of his evening hanging out in his wonderful office with his wonderful fellow human philanthropist. You guys are truly incredible, and you're doing something wonderful. And as you're describing your story, you immediately stand out. What you guys stand for and how you're doing it as a nonprofit immediately stands out for me, and that's really cool. So just thank you for doing what you do. And again, I know I said this before, but thank you for not giving up and making something this amazing out of it. That's really that alone, as flawed and as all those other things about you, like that alone is amazing. I think a lot more cool than you probably give yourself credit for. Oh, thank you so much for the follow. Playing through Celeste now, actually, I've already cried. Yeah, that's so I've seen.
Brutal.
Amazing hearing this story. Thank you so much for sharing it. I really appreciate it. I don't know how to express it. Well, so that's what I'm doing. I'm trying to express it on your behalf, but I'm making the guy blush, so now I'm feeling bad.
No, thank you. I really appreciate the kind words. It means a lot, and the feedback from the community is fantastic as well. I think we seldom pull our heads up from what we do, and it's probably at our greatest detriment so far. We definitely should market what we do and tell people our story, but we're so busy just doing it, just living it, to get the feedback on it. That just makes my day. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for what you do. The Exception, thank you so much for that subscription, and thank you so much for supporting what we're doing here. Can we get some links for the venture? Yeah, here are all the links. Run off and follow them all. I've been collecting them over the course of the stream, so I think that's everything. And if you guys are in my Discord, if you're not in my Discord, be sure to send me a message and I'll pop you in there. And if you are in the Discord and there are any other links, I'll have Jason send them over to me, and I'll be sure to post them both with this video and with in the Discord. The Facebook one is not working. It's not. That's unfortunate.
Oh, the Facebook is URRAD as well.
Oh, is it? I thought it was. Okay. All right. Well, so thank you for letting me know that doesn't work, because that is very important. Okay. Do you have any closing remarks? Anything else that you wanted to make sure that we know?
Just that it was an absolute pleasure being on here. Really, what you do is fantastic, giving your audience, your community, a way to hear these stories, have access to these powerful nonprofits and communities. I love it. I want to be involved. If people want to follow us and see more of what we're doing, you have the links. We actually go live, I think, this Friday. Friday we do like a Q&A. We bring our therapists on, and you can just ask them a bunch of questions in real time, and we answer questions that people have submitted online. So could be another outlet to take advantage of.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's awesome. That's exactly the kind of thing that I'm always trying to promote and help people get. You guys, I hope there's a few other things that came to mind that I'll definitely just tap you about, that other people who are doing similar stuff around the Twitchosphere that I want to make sure that you guys are aware of, that we'll talk about separately. Haipu, indeed. It is so awesome to have you on. Thank you so much for being here. So our motto our motto on the stream is be the light, and that's this idea that when you are unwell, you go out there and you set that example to other people of how you wish you were treated. You treat others with that same love and care and light that you deserve, and you set an example for how people with mental health issues should be treated by treating other people that way. So when we sign off, I always ask that we have a wonderful night, and then I ask our guests to repeat our motto. So if it's not too much to ask you guys, I am going to host somebody, but I'm not going to be sending you off on a raid. I hope you have a wonderful night. Thank you all so much for being here. And don't forget to, Jason,
be the light.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody. Have a wonderful night, and be sure to follow Rad on all their adventures. Bye.
Bye, everyone.